Today we are working on this old mongoose bike. I bought this bike off Craigslist for $35, and it had this right here on it, this e-bike kit, and that is called a bbshd. It's made by Bafang, but this one's actually resold by Luna Cycles. So it says Luna on the back here. Bafang is one of the top Chinese manufacturers of e-bike kits. For $35, I stole this thing. This is a fairly expensive item if it was new, but it needed a few small parts in order to make it work, and I of course had to buy this battery, and I spent a little bit too much on it. I spent about $300 on the battery, and I had to buy the display. The display was broken. So I don't have much in this e-bike at all, and it's been fantastic for me. I've been riding with it. I commute back and forth to work sometimes. It'll do 28 miles an hour, but I did have to put some money in the bike, so it's not like I got $35 in it now. I have a lot more than that. I bought tires and had the wheels straightened and serviced and stuff. I'm very committed to biking, and I love this e-bike. It's freaking magic. It just cruises and goes, and it's silent, and anybody who's driven an electric car and loves that smooth power can appreciate a bike like this that just goes and it's quiet and silent. But after going about 250 miles on it, it quit working. So after going about 250 miles on this bike, it quit working. A few days prior to it, it showed some symptoms like quitting, like it would just stop working, but then a moment later it would start working again. And if you understand the way these things work, they power off the motor when you pull on the brakes. They have a little wire there that senses when you stepped on the brakes, because they don't want the motor powering while you're braking. That's a safety thing. So they turn off the motor when the brakes are on. So I thought it might be the brakes sticking on, and a couple times it almost seemed like I'd flick this and it would start working. So the first thing I did to diagnose this was completely disconnect the brake switches, and that didn't change anything. So I wanted to test it, but the connectors are very sealed. Now I eliminated the battery right off the bat. I could back probe it and get 48 volts there. This is a 48 volt battery. I pulled these Anderson connectors apart, did a visual inspection. None of them were burnt, and they flow a little bit of amperage through there, so sometimes they'll burn up the connector, especially if there's some water in there or something. Obviously it's a bicycle, and it's a little bit exposed to the weather, but because of that, all the harnesses are really sealed up, and you can't really back probe much. And I was pretty confident that it wasn't the instrument cluster. The instrument cluster still lighted up. I was pretty confident it wasn't the battery. I still had 48 volts when it wasn't working. I was fairly confident it was the motor or the controller. So then a few days later, it started working again. It took 2 or 3 days, and because I was tinkering with it every day. So I'm having trouble diagnosing my e-bike. It quits powering, and I'm stuck with pedaling it, and it's a pretty heavy bike, so I don't want to do that. I can ride my regular bike. It's not that bad. But on cold days, I really don't want to be huffing and puffing the cold air in and out of my lungs. That's what makes it uncomfortable. It's not that I'm freezing to death. It's just I don't want to be huffing and puffing the cold air into me. So I found this thread right here. And this is on the Electric Bike Forum. And you could search for BBS Documentation Master Repository. And this gives a lot of information on these BBS motors. Mine's a bbshd. But it covers the BBS01 and I think the bbshd also. And if you scroll down, it's got a whole section on troubleshooting. It's got a lot of videos linked too, so there's a lot of good information there. Maybe someday this video will be featured there. But there's an error list for trouble codes. Mine has no trouble codes, by the way. And it says troubleshooting a completely dead. Now, I think I need to consider mine completely dead, because when it's completely dead, it's completely dead, but it works sometimes. So when I click here, it shows a whole bunch of troubleshooting information, but unfortunately, once you kind of get here, it kind of says swap out a controller and see if it fixes it. Now,
Once again, that's my problem. I don't want to do that. And the ability to test it is very, very lacking. Like the connectors are sealed from water, and so you can't back probe. And so you're kind of left with ohm checking, and in the automotive world, ohm checking is the lowest form of testing. You really want some type of live testing with the thing in use. Once again, I kind of feel like it's either the motor, the Hall sensors in the motor, or the controller. But then I found this information here. And this says, hallelujah, Bafang finally stops using crappy MOSFETs in the BBSO2 controller. And if you want to Google this, just search for that phrase and you'll find it. It's on a different forum than the one I was just on. But as you scroll down, it says, Bafang, you previously used P75NF75 MOSFETs, and then they switched to IRFB3077 MOSFETs, and it says right here it should run much cooler and be able to handle more amps for longer, even if you're a fat guy like me. So that reinforces my theory that it's probably the controller causing this. Now, as you drive these things, you're supposed to go uphill in lower gears. And of course, I wasn't doing the best job of doing that. I would want to go faster. I'd want to be pedaling and giving effort. The thing goes so fast that I can't pedal in the highest gear as fast as it's going. My legs are moving like crazy. And even going uphill, I really needed to be in the highest gear for me to add anything to it. Now, the hills in my area aren't huge, but so I probably should have been riding around a little bit lower gear, going a little bit slower. I'm trying to give it all the assist I can with my legs, but so as I scroll down here, it doesn't really say any good testing. It just says replace it. Now, eventually, I found this right here for testing for blown MOSFETs. Now, this is in a rear wheel hub motor, but all brushless DC motors kind of operate the same. So I did this test here with an ohm meter, and it showed nothing. Now, understand this is a pretty high resistance measurement of 10 kilo ohms. I'm not sure if my meter will push through a resistance of 10 kilo ohms. Analog meter certainly would, but this didn't show anything for me. Once again, I'm a diagnostician. I want to do some live testing, especially since this thing starts working again if it sits for a while. So maybe that scenario in itself is further confirmation that it needs a controller. But finally, I figured out what to do. I pulled the controller from the motor. That involved pulling the crank off the one side, pulling a plastic cover off, and I ended up getting the controller separate, and then I could pierce the wires to the phase motors on the between the controller and the motor. And that's what this video is about, me finding the problem. Okay, I've set up the picoscope with 3 channels on, and then I have set the voltage scale to 100 volts. The battery is 48 volts. Let me move this blue one up just a little bit, give me a little bit more room away from the red one. And then we will pull the trigger throttle. And I'm going to switch to the camera real quick to show you that it's spinning.
And it just quit. Okay.
And it just quit. Okay, but you guys saw it. It had a full complement of waveform on all 3 channels, and now it's just getting a waveform on the blue one. That's throttle, off throttle, throttle. I think with that test alone, we have enough information to make the determination that the controllers are a problem. I pull the throttle, we get that pattern on the blue, and as I let up, that pattern goes away. Pull on the throttle, we get that pattern on the blue. And obviously, our motor stops spinning.
This video's ended up way too long. Put down in the comments below if you like long videos with like 26 minutes long, or like 15-minute videos with a part 1 and a part 2 also. Also, put your guess down in the comments what you think it is. See you in part 2. If you like this video or learned anything from it, click the like button. And if you want to contribute to the continued production of these videos, find the donate icon on my website at www.kansascitytdi.com. And please do me a favor, don't call me for tech help. Post your questions in the comments down below. And if you want to watch some more of my videos, there's one right there and one right there. And don't forget to subscribe.